essence of this unique online platform designed to provide a safe and supportive environment for people across the globe to share their stories and wisdom. Discover how we together fosters meaningful conversations that impact individuals, families, and communities. Be part of this transformative journey into mental wellness today. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Let me share a little bit about the guests that we have here today. Alan Stevens is an international profile and communications specialist with over 30 years of experience reading people and improving human interactions. He trains businesses in team building, sales, negotiations, and recruitment. His work spans various industries and continents. He holds leadership roles in charities and the Surf Life Saving Association. Stevens holds a master's certification in human trait recognition, neuro-linguistic programming, neurological repatterning, and Ericksonian hypnosis with proficiency in micro and subtle expression recognition and dangerous demeanor detection. My goodness, that was a mouthful, and I am so pleased to help welcome Mr. Alan Stevens to the stage. Welcome.
Thanks very much, April. And you really did your homework finding all that information out.
Well, and my goodness, you have such a plethora of information and knowledge, and it's so exciting and very well fit because me having a law enforcement background, this is stuff that's really exciting to me. And so I'm so pleased to be able to bring this to the forefront to our audience today. Now let's get started and share a little bit more about you.
Okay, well, I'm Australian, originally born in Sydney, Australia, and now living in Newcastle, a regional city about 160 kilometres north of Sydney. I've been here since about 1975. I've worked in a range of different industries. I came from Sydney to Newcastle to work in our national telephone carrier, more into the computer section though. So this is where I started my journey. I was put in charge of men who are all older than me. My second in charge was 38 and I was only 23, and no leadership training or any other development training like that before I was put in charge. So that's when I started learning to find out more about people, because that was a task on its own. So I started with body language, and then in the 80s got involved with psychometric profiling, which was all about reading people to understand, or actually asking them questions to work out their personalities. In the 90s, started working with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, left telecom at that stage and worked in just about every industry you can think of since then. I've actually done so many different healing modalities that I had a friend of mine one day say, Alan, you've done so many therapies, it's probably time you were in therapy, which I couldn't really quite argue with him at the time. But I've worked in those fields, and then around about the turn of the century, doesn't that make me feel old, the turn of the century, I started to looking at face profiling, and that's where things really started moving. So it's, for me, my whole life is about relationships. First 50 years of my life was chasing relationships, and the last 2 decades has been in helping people build their relationships.
Oh, that's well said. Well said. Many of us do just that, right? In this thing called life, where we are chasing after relationships, the, wanting the acceptance of love, etc. And then we learn those lessons and we have a greater understanding. And then we turn into the sages, and where we get to serve others and mentor others as they're on their own journey through all of that, right?
That's it. Well, as I said, I chased relationships for the first 50 years and really didn't have many great relationships. I'd been married and divorced twice. I've had a lot of broken relationships. And in fact, I'd even had business partners who went to the bank out. So I had to learn how to read people. In the process of starting to learn how to read people, I really started getting interested in people. And my focus went from me having relationships to understanding them. And the moment I started understanding them, my relationships really flourished. So it was a lesson for me not to chase things, but to act in a way and let those things come to you.
So it was almost in the beginning like this defense mechanism, this tool that you had in order to help protect yourself so you weren't getting, hurt emotionally by all of these relationships that were failing.
That's it. See, my father died when I was 3, so I grew up with my mother and sister. All the way through school, I got bullied. I went through a lot of tough times when I was younger, but in that process, I was quite angry. I pulled back from people. It was all about looking after myself and focusing on me. But one of the things that I hope comes with age is a little bit of wisdom in which we start to look at things. All the stuff that happened to me in the past, I've never begrudged. At the time, I would have liked them to be different. But right now, I look at them and say, well, they've made me who I am today. So with what happens to us, how do we learn from that? And so when I talk about my past with people, I'm not going through any of the old stuff and re-feeling it. I'm sharing a story with people so that they can learn from it as well. And so the people said, well, where did I get most of my training from? SOL, the School of Hard Knocks, the School of Life, etc. Those sort of things is where I got my education from. So I learned a lot of technical stuff that I learned along the way, but a lot of it was about understanding other people and all the rest of it, bringing that together. So taking the focus off myself was the most important thing, but realizing everything that happened to me had an upside and a downside. I focus on the downside then. Now I look at the upside. What did I learn from that? How did I change my life? And how have I been able to help other people?
Well, Alan, I want to jump into, you mentioned storytelling and how you're telling a story. You're not rehashing all of the feelings and the emotions that you experienced. And I know that it takes us a little bit to get to that, where we can be and feel safe to do so, which is exactly what you've created. But I want to go back a little bit because I want to mention that something that I really appreciate about your colorful background, you've worn so many hats, right? You're like, I've done just about everything. But because of that, it's really interesting. You have gone into certain areas. And to include learning to read people's in the physical aspect, tapping into the emotional aspect, NLP, and the healing aspect. You talked about, I have dived a little bit into the healing aspects of self-massage, etc. And so, Alan, let's go back to bringing all of that into creating the story front, this beautiful place where people can come and share their stories. That said, like we mentioned, it takes a little bit to get to the point where we feel like we can share our story without all of that emotional entanglement involved.
And that's it. See, most people, and I'm no different. When I first had my stories, I found it really difficult to share it with people because I always wondered about what they thought about it, etc. But I learnt, through the things that happened in my life, and then especially with starting the Campfire Project, that everybody on the planet is completely different to everybody else. There are no two people with the same personalities. Everybody is different. And therefore, everybody's had different experiences. And we are a combination of how we've chosen to respond to all the things that have happened in our life. So by taking that on board and then realizing that, I know that there are no two people with the same personality and no two people with the same story. Everybody has their own story. And therefore, everybody's story is valuable. Now, when I'm talking to people, I'm listening to understand. I'm not listening to respond to them. When somebody's explaining things to me, I'm totally focused on what they're saying. There's a real gift in that, not a gift that I'm giving them. They may take it that way, but the gift comes back to me because I get the opportunity to see somebody open up and share their story with me, especially when they've never shared it with anybody else before. That's a great honor. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very humbled by it as well, that people have felt safe enough to share their stories. And I learned so much about them. And that's actually also helped me to open up more about my life as well. Because the thing that empowers us is the stories we're able to share with others and when we make a connection with the other person.
So, yes, it's this beautiful transition of those energies, the
Mm,
healing energies. Now, Alan, with your background, you of all people know very, very well what happens to us emotionally and that those
mm.
healing properties when we do start to share our stories. Do you want to shed a little bit of light on that of really the transformation of what happens to a human being when they start opening up like that?
Mm. Well, anybody who listens to another person with that intent to understand them, and you're watching them, you'll see their body change, their posture, their emotions, the way they talk. Everything starts to really flow because they go from that nervousness of holding back and very shy and everything else, the body locked up, and they start to share. When they know that you're listening, their focus is in letting their story out. I'll give you an example. When I first I was learning my NLP, I was sitting down with the head instructor, and we were in a motel where out the window, the monorail went past the window. But he asked me about my second divorce and what that was like. And I started telling my story, and I realized I was telling the same story that I told everybody else. It got to the point where I was getting right into that point of where talking about the emotions I felt when we separated, and the monorail went past the window. And he just broke the conversation. He said, "Oh, have you ever been on the monorail before?" And here I am I'm pouring my heart out, and he's interrupted me to tell me about this monorail. And no, I haven't been on the monorail. What are you talking about? Then we talked about that for a little bit. As he said, he'd been on a few times. It goes past on a regular basis. Then he went, "Okay, continue your story." And the thing was, I could not continue the story from where I'd left it off because my emotions have been changed in the process. One of the things that we make a mistake of when we tell the same story over and over with more of a complaint about our life story, we just anchor ourselves into it more and more. But when we have somebody who is listening and showing that they have real interest, but also has the skills to break the patterns when we get caught up too much into those emotions, everything changes for us. And we can never tell that story the same way again. But if you've got, in the Campfire Project, I will introduce somebody, ask them about this is where you are today. Tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today? And at that point, I shut up and I stop talking. And I might sit there for 45 minutes. And these are people who usually say to me, "Alan, I don't know whether I can talk about this. I've never talked to anybody else before." And I go, "Okay, well," and I just ask them that question. They start talking. And because they can see that I'm focused on listening to them, I'm not interrupting them, I'm not responding in a negative way to what they're saying, because in reality, what most people, we feel what we call emotional empathy. We have cognitive empathy, that I can see you're in pain. Even they say even a torturer needs that, a bully needs that, otherwise they don't get their jollies. We have the emotional empathy where we feel the other person's pain and we take it on. And what happens in most cases is we either feel our own pain coming up in that, or we don't want to be with that, so we try and separate from the person. Compassionate empathy is when I can say, I can see your pain, I can feel your pain, but okay, let's do something about it. But I have to acknowledge their pain first of all, because that's showing respect to them and going, "Look, that must feel terrible, must have been terrible for you. I haven't been through something like that." But then talking a little bit more and then giving the possibilities. Well, what do you think you can do about that? Now we're moving towards a solution. So when people start talking and they can see that, you're just taking it all in, you're focused on them and engage with them, they will start talking more. And usually when I'm doing an interview, 45 minutes will pass before I've said another word. And I'm watching the person as they're telling their story and watching their body language. I can see that the shoulders relaxing, their breathing changes. And all of that, I can see it in the pupils in their eyes as well, the dilation, etc. I can see the sparkle coming back in their eyes. Then I'll ask a few questions towards the end of it so that they know that I've been listening. Because as I say to everybody, you've got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, and you use them in that proportion. And when you're using your mouth, don't make statements. Ask every possible question you can think of, and then ask one more. And people will go, "Well, how can I ask one more question if I've asked every question I can think of?" Well, when you get to that point, from what you've been telling me is, and this is what I understand, have I got it right? Now, if you have, the person's going to say yes, and they're going to feel great because they know you've been listening. If they say no, then they'll start to correct you on what you got wrong. that's even a bigger win, because now you're into a deeper conversation. This is when they really know you're listening, because before it was questions, now it's all conversation, and you're engaging with them at a new level again. Both of those ways in which to deal with people and talk to people completely changes the situation for them. As I say, I don't need to feel your pain. I don't want to feel your pain. I do want to acknowledge it, but I don't want to hold on to it. And I want to talk to you in a way in which you can then start to release it as well.
Well, I really appreciate that you bring that into the space as well. You give them so much room to express themselves. I've always said stories are very, very powerful, because when we share our stories, the listener gets to say, me too. So there's that connection piece, the relational piece that we share as human beings. And we're all on this journey together, sharing very similar feelings and emotions, right? And yet, like you mentioned too, we all have our own individual, unique stories that we want to share. We want to have that space for. Now, we're going to go into our first commercial. And when we get back, Ellen, what I would love to know is, what is it like? Because you've heard hundreds, if not more, stories, probably more at this point, right? And what is that like on an energetic level when you do take in a lot of this emotional pain that you get to hear from others? So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone. We are here with Alan Stevens, and who has more credentials and has worn all the hats than I can even say again. So, but this is a very exciting person to be speaking with. So thank you again, Alan, for being here on the Wellness Driven Life Show. We're talking about stories, and you've created this incredible platform where you allow people to have space to share their stories, to share their traumas, to get it out. But not only that, you guide them after giving them all the space to listen and have the safe space to free that. But you say, okay, this happened, and now what? But I want to ask you, Ellen, what has it been like for you energetically to hold space for all of these feelings and emotions and stories and trauma? What has that been like for you?
You'll see, all my personality traits, I'm highly emotional. I'm highly empathetic, which has been great for being a massage therapist, for being a therapist in counseling, etc. All of those things are great. But the downside is I can hold on to things. And that was the one thing I had to learn very quickly, was to learn how to let go. Because when I hold on to it, it's about me. It's not about the other person. But when I learned to listen to people intently, to understand them, I wasn't feeling their pain anymore. And I've had some people sit there and tell some horrific things that they've been through in their past. And I've had so many people say to me, Alan, I just told you something that I've never told anybody else. And when I have, or if I have told them, they've flinched, they've pulled away. But you haven't, there hasn't even been a change of expression on your face. You're still intently listening to me. It's something I've had to learn, because I realized that to be there for somebody else, I had to be the best version of myself. I had to make sure that I didn't take their things on. It's not a matter of just turning cold to it. Yes, I feel it, but I know that this is something that they've lived through. It will pass for them. It will also pass for me as well, anything that happens in my life. So I learned that things happen in the moment. We learn from those. If I hold on to it, then we take it into our future. But if we don't hold on to it, then we can take a different approach altogether. As I said, I've been married and divorced twice. I've been through a lot of things there. I can look back at my ex-partners with love and affection as opposed to anger because we split up. So that's how I chose. That's one of the things I learned. The most powerful thing we have, regardless of how insulated we are to other people's emotions or how open we are to them, that we have a control over everything. It's a choice. I can choose to take on someone's pain. And I looked at that and thought, how does that help them? And how does that help me? It doesn't help either of us. It makes me feel worse. For them, it anchors them more into what they're going through. And if I care for them, I can't do that. So I realized I just couldn't pick other people's stuff up. So it wasn't needing to turn cold. It was having a new reason in the way I was going to respond. My focus is on them. Therefore, there's no place for me to take on that emotion and carry it around.
I really love how you share that. And, it's a whole new perspective, like you said, about taking in this information, how to carry it, what to do with it, how to release it, not holding on, to let go. And that said, Alan, because you talk to so many people and you know that you need to do this, what are some of the practices that you have in order to do that for yourself?
Well, as I said, everything starts with the decision that we make. So that's where it had to start, with deciding I wasn't going to take that on. But I've had a lot of events happen in my life. So it's been a slow progression in learning that. I'll give you an example. My first wife, when she left, I had 3 boys to raise on my own. They were 4, 11, and 12 at the time. As they grew up and I got married a second time, my boys, 2 oldest ones, were out on their own at that stage. They were old enough to have their own places. My youngest boy moved back with his mother. He fought with her on a regular basis. And, I'd get together with him and we'd go out camping, he'd go back and he'd be respectful. And at that point, I looked at it and thought, I could be quite happy the fact that he's fighting with her and making her life miserable. But I thought, hang on, I love my sons. That what she brought into our marriage was, between the 2 of us, we created 3 sons that I love and respect. And with that, I could see them repeating my history. So I realized that they had to respect their mother. So straight away, by making that decision, I was able to then build a relationship with her so that she was able to come in and co-parent again with them. I was spending the full time with me, and a little bit of time with her, but they had that connection with her. And that was extremely important, because otherwise they go through life and repeat my history. Because our children don't listen to what we say, they watch what we do and say, and they take that on. And so when we actually run our history, they pick it up and repeat it. And so therefore I had to change that. So it was a decision to change that situation. So I've realized that finding the importance of a situation and focusing on that, I was able to let go of the emotions. It just became an easy thing to do after I practiced it over and over. And in fact, after my second divorce, their mother needed somewhere to stay for 3 months. And she came to me and she said, Alan, you live on your own. You've got a spare room. Can I be a lodger? This is when my oldest boy was in his mid-30s. And I said, as long as it's for 3 months, it's separate lives. I run my business from home and you just give me space and everything else. You're paying your bills. Fair enough. She moved out 3.5 years later. And as everybody said, how could I do that? It was a matter of choice. Yes, she helped by paying some of the bills and everything else. But at the same time, the most important thing was, as I just said a moment ago, what did she bring into the marriage? She could say that I was, walked away and I wasn't good enough to be a husband. She, left her children, and I could hate her for that, or I could love her for the fact that she gave me 3 sons I love and respect. So it was just an easy choice. As soon as I learned how to make choices, I didn't need to practice anything after that. It was always just look at the choice you're making. What's the positive side of it? What's the negative side? Not what's my emotion right now, but if I do this, what's the bigger picture? And I realized that my sons were watching everything I was doing. They are all married. They've all got their wives. They've got their children. So I'm a grandfather of 6 grandchildren now. Each of the boys have got 2 kids each. That wouldn't have happened if we hadn't behaved the way that we had and had made the choices that we made. So I always say to people, if you're a parent and you love your children and you've separated, you need to co-parent. You don't have to love your partner, but you treat them with respect. So the kids, what actually happens is your children know when you're complaining about your ex that half of them is no good.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose their respect if you do that. But if you treat your ex-partner with respect and you teach them how to respect your ex-partner, the end result is they will love you for it.
Yeah.
It's all about the children. So you see how the decision completely changed the situation.
Power of choice and really having an understanding of that. Absolutely. And of course, the children, that perspective is game changing. It truly is. When we have this understanding that what we're doing is a direct reflection of what they're doing and what they're going to do. And so it doesn't help heal and it doesn't help transform any situations if you continue to do that. That's kind of that cycle of abuse or violence or what have you. It's just continuing that. And so it doesn't help go anywhere. There's so much to be said about when we start healing ourselves, it in turn heals those around us. And I think that that's something very much that you're bringing to the forefront with this community.
Yeah, because everything we do has an impact on people around us. You know, you smile at somebody and, you know, you really have that great joyful smile on your face. They respond in that way. They've changed the emotions inside their body, the chemicals that are flowing through. The next person they look at, they smile back to them. It's an epidemic. Once you start this, it just flows and flows and flows. And so, and I had somebody I was talking to yesterday who sent me a message on Facebook who had wanted to tell me about a young girl that she had met many, many years earlier. And she was telling the girl about some of her travels. So this girl lived in a remote area in isolation. And she, when she caught up to her many years later, she'd found out this girl had started going on touring around the world as well. It completely changed her life. She never knew the words she said to that person had such an impact. And we hear this story all the time where somebody has just befriended somebody, just done a kind act, helped them pick up their books off the ground or whatever. And that person then goes, somebody cares about me. And that person later on you find was actually planning to go home and commit suicide, has now changed their view. This is the whole thing that most of the things that we do in life, we will never know the impact. And this is, but we don't need to know the impact. By doing the right thing, we just know that somebody else has benefited from it. And the more that other people benefit, the more you feel respect and love for yourself as well.
That's a powerful statement then. Absolutely, it is. The more you feel the power, the respect.
Yeah, well, see, at the end of the day, you can't, that's how your saying goes, you can't light someone else's path without lighting your own.
Right.
People ask me, am I a teacher? And I go, yeah, I'm a part-time teacher, but I'm a full-time learner. And when people come to me, I say, well, what am I going to learn you today? And they go, that's bad grammar. And I go, no, because to teach you, I need to learn as much as I possibly can about you, to understand you, to know how to deliver the information to you, to know what information that you really need, etc. I don't tell people what they should be doing. I ask questions. So they become their own therapists and they work out, oh, I should be doing this. I go, that's a pretty good idea. And that's why with all the talks I've had on the Campfire Project, it's been over 600 hours of conversations with people. And they say to me at the end of it, that was absolutely brilliant. I go, well, would you like to thank the therapist? And they go open their mouth. I said, no, get off the call, go look in the mirror and say thank you to yourself because you're finally listening to your unconscious mind. It's screaming at you all the time. This is why when we're upset with other people, we end up getting sick because our conscious mind's focusing on, well, it's like hoping that they, taking poison yourself and hoping they will die. It doesn't work. And that's virtually what we're doing to our body. Our unconscious mind is trying to change it. Our body will get sicker. Our emotions will get worse. And until you realize that the only person you're affecting is yourself. So when you forgive somebody else, it's got nothing to do with them. You're just releasing everything from yourself.
It literally is healing.
It is. And as the old saying, physician, heal thyself, or counselor, heal thyself. When you're in that situation, the person who's going through that stuff with the right guidance around them and knowing they're not alone can then open their thinking up to make different choices themselves. And the choices we make ourselves are the ones that we embody. When other people tell us what changes to make, we don't usually take that on. because, oh, that won't work. But when it comes from our unconscious mind, we finally accept it at the conscious level, our life changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Going into the unconscious thing, that's really where we create the most change on that unconscious level. Now, Ellen, with the Campfire Project, what has that been like for you, where you've shared a few different examples of stories or things that can happen when we share, just when we say something positive to somebody else, and how it can be so drastically life-changing for them when we don't realize that until later on. It's so impactful. Now, you've created this community that that's just snowballing, right? With all of those impacts, that is helping change the course of our evolution. And so share a little bit about that. I want people to know more in depth about it, where they can find it, and all of that. So I'm going to put it on the screen here, the campfireproject.com.au, and I'm going to give you the stage.
Thank you very much. Well, how it came about, first of all, was in business, especially talking to men. I would ask them just a simple question, looking at your personal life and your business life. What would be one word to describe how you feel? And two words kept coming back. One was confused and the other one was frustrated. And so I started asking the men, well, what are you confused about? And they said, and frustrated about. And they said, well, look, at home, especially baby boomers and Gen X, our role was to go out and bring the resources back to the family. So we showed our love by being absent. And that's what we thought we were doing. But then our families were telling us that you're physically and emotionally absent. We need you here. And the men would then say, well, if I'm not out bringing the resources, if I'm here, there's no resources coming in. But if I'm out there just getting the resources, I'm away from my family and they feel rejected. It was a no-win situation. At the same time, we had in the business, I said, well, rightio, what's an issue here? And they said, well, look, we believe in gender equality. We believe in political correctness or things being done the right way. But the problem with both of those things today is that goalposts keep moving. What we can say today, we know we won't be able to say tomorrow because there'll be a new slant put on it. We just can't keep up with it. And we're worried that we'll say the wrong thing. Now, when you're focused on that sort of situation, whatever you're focused on, you'll get more of. So if you're worried about saying the wrong thing, I guarantee you're going to say the wrong thing. And so that was causing anger in the workplace and even domestic violence at some point, because when anybody is put into a corner, they don't know how to respond, they can't discuss it or anything else, it builds up and it comes out physically. If we can't get it out in verbally, it will come out physically. And so I realized that men needed a safe place where they could tell their stories, not a place where somebody would counsel them, agree with them, tell them they were right or wrong or anything else, but just be the eyes and ears that they've never had before. Because most of us walk around with the things that are troubling us, talking to a brick wall. And so we repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. Every human on the planet, the things we have in similarity is that we want to belong, that we can feel that we contribute, that we're valued, that we're loved. Same thing in the workplace. We want to know that we've got value there, etc. So once we realize that was the first thing. This is what I realized, there was a commonality with everybody. And so if I got that, I listen to understand that, and then I can listen to the differences and accept those. And so with the men, I started interviewing them where they could tell their stories. And I thought, okay, let's bring them into panel discussions and start talking about things like, masculinity, femininity, pornography, all the toxicities and everything else. But I'd already had women in the group from day one, because the last thing I wanted was a men's group. Because the trouble, it's like a lot of the men's groups are very similar to motivational seminars. You go to it, you're real happy, you're feeling fantastic, you go home, the real world slaps you in the face again, and you're waiting for the next seminar to come out. And that's what was happening to a lot of the men. They couldn't explain what they felt out there. So it was another feeling of extra isolation when they went back home.
I want to stop on this for a minute, if I may, Alan, because it is a very interesting time in history. Well, for all of us, and for men, I feel in particularly, because of that. It's like this time of, yes, we need to feel more, right? Step into our emotions, our heart center, and also stepping out of the world of this very major masculine role of dominance, of being the head of household. And so there's been this clashing with it. And then men are like, who and what do you want me to be?
Exactly.
And, you know, how do I be a man and show up in the world, you know, when there's all of this he said, she said, this is what we want you to do, this is not what we want you to do, and it's a lot of turmoil in the world in this regard right now.
Yeah, and see, when you're in that situation, you're going to respond in a negative way. But see, I've had women in the group from day one, but I realised if the men didn't speak first, if the women spoke first, the men never would. Because, you know, I'm a baby boomer. It was always, you know, don't have your life on your sleeves, you know, suck it up, don't cry, boys don't cry, and all that sort of thing. We were great students. We learnt those lessons and carried it through. We taught our kids, the Gen X, and Gen X started teaching the other kids. So men have been fantastic students. And we've learnt this stuff so deeply, it's now hard to change that programming. It's like having Windows operating on your machine, and then all of a sudden you want to turn the machine into a Mac and you're running OIS. It doesn't work. It takes a lot of work to actually change a program. And so I realized the men needed to talk first. And I wanted the women to hear how men could speak when the men felt safe to do so. So the men opened up with their one-on-one stories, and I brought them into the panel discussions, and we talked about all those different things. And I was waiting for it. And as soon as I saw it, I had the biggest smile on my face, because the women sent me personal messages going, we love these guys. We've never heard men talk so deeply about their emotions, nor so wisely about how to improve society. It was a revelation to them that men could actually respond this way. So they said, can we get involved? And I went, yes. So I brought the women into the one-on-ones, brought them into the panel discussions. We've covered things like menstruation, menopause, does size matter in the bedroom? No subjects off the table. We've got a full range of the different gender identities, the cultures, religions, etc. We've in 6 years, almost 6 years in August this year. It will be well over 600 hours of conversations we've had. We've had no bigotry, no sexism, and no racism. And not once has anybody been disrespectful to anybody else in those conversations. In fact, if you hear the men and the women talking about each other when the others aren't there, it's with total respect. These men are seeing a new appreciation for the women. The women are seeing these men and my God, these guys are so strong. You know, because for a man to open up and show his vulnerability, that takes strength.
It's a different kind of appeal too. You know, there's another appreciation in appearance and all of these things. It's just brightens up more of that essence of being fully human, that authentic self.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're just telling your story over and over, then it sounds like you're whinging to somebody who's listening to it, hearing the same story each time. But when you're able to tell that story and then in a conversation, then starting to go, well, this is what we should be doing, etc., the women realize, okay, that's the backstory. This is what this person's been through. This is the quality of the character of this man. And all of a sudden, he's now talking about, well, this is how we can improve things. To the women, I guarantee it's extremely attractive. You know, if I'm talking to somebody and the men I can see them start to tear up when they're telling their stories. If they get to that point and I'm going, oh, for God's sake, you call that crying? Yeah, I'll show you how to do a proper cry. This is my pattern interrupt in that cycle. They go, what are you talking about? I go, hey, and we have a bit of a conversation, have a bit of a laugh about the tears, and they realize it's okay. And then once they realize it's okay to share that emotion without being locked in the emotion, because we're telling the story so we can move forward, then it's brilliant. If they're telling the story, they're crying so they can tell the same story over and over. No, well, that's no good to anybody. It's definitely no good to them. But so it comes down to recognizing that. And that's one of the things that, like I said, I'm so focused on all of that, I've got no time to focus on me. So I don't pick stuff up just because I'm too busy.
Yes. And you're teaching people, guiding people into that, again, the healing process of once we share that story, now what? And not rehashing it over and over and over. This is really a brilliance that's put behind it. You've done it a while. You've shared with us all of the things that, you know, all of the stories and numbers. So, and we have the website here. Share with us a little bit about how does somebody become involved if they're so intrigued to do so, because it's very intriguing.
Yeah, well, when you go to the website, it's a very simple website. There's 3 videos on the first page, and the first video talks about what's the Campfire Project about. It talks about this is a safe place for both men and women to come and tell their stories with total respect, all genders, all cultures, all religions. And then the second video goes into, well, what you can expect in a one-on-one interview or discussion. And then from there, what the panel, third video is on the panel discussions. So people get an idea of that. There's a Facebook logo on the first, on the landing page. Once you've had a look at the videos, hit that. That takes you to the group page in Facebook. And this, as I said, this is on Facebook, and we've never had any disrespect for anybody in that group, because to get into the group, you have to answer 2 questions. And both the questions are really asking the same thing. It's just asking whether you'll respect everybody. And everybody said to me, well, why are you asking the same question twice? I went, there's your 2 chances. You don't get a third. And they went,
2 strikes and you're out.
Yeah, because if you're disrespectful, I'll put you out. I'll talk to you out there, but I won't discuss anything in the Campfire Project. This is not a place to have those. It's one-on-one a situation. But we've never really had to put anybody out. That's the brilliant part of it. We did have a couple of people who just realised that this wasn't their place, simply because they weren't the cooperative type. They were trying to just dump on other people, and they very quickly picked up, and they just removed themselves very fast. But in that, see, any person's job, like a parent's job, is with children. We are not carpenters. We are not sculptors. Our job's not to turn our kids into something. We are gardeners. Our job is to nurture them to become the best versions of themselves. It's the same thing in a business where you're employing people. A leader's job is to raise other people up to do the work that you're doing yourself, so that they can do the work that you're doing and the work you don't want to do, so that you can go on and do other work. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep working in your business. And therefore, by raising other people up to do their work and hopefully do it better than you've ever done it, you can step out of there and go and work on the business or go on to the next task. This is also my attitude in the Campfire Project. We've got some people in there, by God, they really, I'm so proud of them. There's one bloke who's my co-host in there, Scott. When he came in, he did his one-on-one, he did his panel discussions. And then I said to him, well, about time for you to step up. He said, what do you mean step up? He said, I've done my one-on-one, I've done my panel discussion. I said, well, would you like to now run some one-on-ones? It took him quite a while, went away and thought about it. His first person he decided to interview was his father, who he hadn't spoken to in 30 years. He was 44 at the time. He hadn't seen his father since he was 14 years old. In fact, when he was 14 years old, he was on the streets himself. And so he interviewed his father, not to find fault, but he said he wanted to understand why his father made the decisions he did. He wanted to understand him. One of the best interviews I've ever seen. Scott has moved on. He's done so many other things, but he's still part of the Campfire Project. We've got the Business of Smiles, which we created as a charity. He and I are both directors on that. And in fact, he's the managing director of it. And it's in the area of mental health. And he's going out into the streets, talking to people every day. He's got men's dinners and women's dinners, bringing everybody together, having deep conversations. This is the guy who was, as he said, he's got a checkered background. He's an ex-bikie and everything else. He said, he didn't feel that anybody would back him. He said, but when I backed him, it completely changed his life, because I could see in him what he couldn't see. And I knew this man had so much more to give. This is the beautiful part when you're listening to people. If you get beyond their backstory of what you can see of where they've come from, to be able to see where they're going or where they could go, when you put that focus into it, nothing else matters. Everything else, like the feelings you'll have about what they've been through, there's no taking on emotions. You're focused on what they can actually create. And looking at Scott, he's going to do stuff that I've never even thought I could do myself, but I guarantee he's going to be doing it. He's going to be, and he will impact on other people who will even outshine him as well. That's what it's all about.
It is really beautiful. And that's an incredible story about his father and healing that relationship and coming to an understanding. I mean, that's very, very rare to come across. Alan, that said, how fast do you think that this is really helping shift us evolve as a species?
Well, I think we're starting to shift in a faster way because with the Campfire Project, anybody can come in. They can join the group as long as they've answered those questions and they're respectful. They can then put their hand up if they want to and tell their one-on-one story. If they happen to be a coach, or once they've done the one-on-one, they can join the panel discussions then as well. But the priority is always a one-on-one. Everything comes through the one-on-one. If they happen to be a coach, we will share the things that they're doing within the group. Coaches can't put posts in there unless they've done a one-on-one. If they have, then they can do that. I've also inviting other groups in, men's groups, women's groups, community groups, getting those people to come in and tell their stories because they will have an interesting backstory of why they're doing what they're doing today, what drove them to starting this group that they're running. It gives us the opportunity then to also advertise their groups to the world. But by getting them into the panel discussions, I've got another ulterior motive, and that is I know that anybody who's running their own group is guaranteed to go through tough times. Who do they turn to when they're going through tough times? They look at the people they're supporting. They go, well, I can't go and dump on them. I need somebody else I can share this. I need somebody I can vent with. I need to be able to get this out of my system. Well, if they've met other leaders from other groups in the panel discussions and they've built some relationships, those leaders now have support from another leader, and therefore their group's going to last longer. They're going to feel that they're not alone. It brings those groups together, and we're creating a global mesh, a global network of all these groups who are now working together as opposed to working separately. Because I know in Brisbane, here north of Sydney, or up in Queensland, there's 85 different charities involved in cancer, removing cancer and cancer research. None of them talk to each other. What a waste. If they did, and they were able to share the resources or even share ideas, what greater impact would they have? Doing things on our own is a struggle. Doing things together, completely different.
I love that. Supporting one another, learning how to communicate. It's brilliant. Alan, do you want to share anything about the business that you do? You have a few of them that you offer with your profiling. Do you want to shed some light on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, with the profiling side of things, it's all about building relationships. I've just had one of my past clients. I profiled her son when he was 6 years old with Asperger, gave her directions on how to take that to school and get the teachers and after schools teachers to use what I'd shared with them. And because she played one against the other, she was able to achieve that. From that, she's been doing testimonials for me for a long time. Her son is now 19, going on 20, living up in Brisbane. He went up there to support his father, who runs a nightclub, and his father's extremely ill. So he's living in a house on his own, supporting his father, and also going and running the involved in running the club. This was a 19-year-old that when he was 6, the teachers and the after schools care had said he would never amount to anything. He has continued to grow. We were able to get him off his medication because they knew how to change the way that he needed to be spoken to. And once they did that, everything changed. The profiling I do teaches people, it might be in business, to build their work relationships. It might be to improve their sales. I don't replace a sales trainer. I teach them how to read the other person, know how they like to buy things, how they like to be spoken to. And then I'll bring in a trainer to teach them different techniques in the sales area. Because when people say to me or say to you in business, what do you bring to the table, like products and services? The only answer I've ever been able to give to that is, I just bring the damn table. And people go, what? They go, well.
I wanted you to shed some light on that, Alan, because you truly do. You have so many gifts that you offer to the world, and it certainly sheds light on the Campfire Project. So I want to make sure that people had a little bit of information on that. Know where to find you. Your personal website is www.alanstevens.com.au. All of this is going to be in the description below. And again, the campfireproject.com.au. So find that information in the description below. Alan, it has been such a delight to have you on the Wellness Driven Life Show today. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, well, the things I'd like to leave you with. Number one is the most important thing you'll learn is the next thing you learn after you think you know everything. But the one that's really important is what you do for yourself dies with you, but what you do for others and for the community is and always will be eternal. And in fact, it will feed your soul more than just looking after yourself.
Oh, that's deep. I like it. I like it very much. Wonderful words of wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank
Alan,
you.
you have been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing all of the things you're doing. My gosh, making a massive global impact. I'm so thrilled to bring this to our audience at the Wellness Driven Life Show. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for our audience. Without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So thank you so much for tuning in. Goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.
Bye.